The drama surrounding the Harvey household has officially hit a terminal velocity, and this time the family man mask isn't just slipping. It's being ripped off by the two people Hollywood fears most. Have you ever wondered how a woman with a past linked to the most dangerous kingpins in the underworld suddenly became the Fashion Week strutting queen of a multi-million-dollar moral empire? Or why Steve Harvey's biological children seem like ghosts in a house where Marjorie's kids are treated like royalty? For years, we were told to ignore the red flags, but the silence has officially been broken. Katt Williams and Wendy Williams have finally joined forces to drop the ultimate truth bomb that is sending shockwaves from the red carpets of LA to the boardrooms of network TV. We're talking about leaked documents, secret alliances, and a tactical takeover of the Harvey legacy that would make a Machiavellian villain blush. Is Marjorie Harvey the loving wife she portrays on Instagram? Or is she the ultimate puppet master who dismantled a family to build a brand? Buckle up, because the receipts are finally being cashed in, and what we found is more disturbing than anyone ever imagined. This isn't just gossip. It's an exposé on the greatest identity heist in entertainment history. The deep dive into Marjorie Harvey's past isn't just about messy gossip or bitter exes anymore, because the paper trail being uncovered right now suggests a level of strategic planning that would put a corporate CEO to shame. To understand how we got here, we have to look at the atmosphere in the early 90s when Marjorie was moving through the streets of Memphis and Houston in circles that most people only see in movies. While Steve Harvey was grinding on the comedy circuit trying to make a name for himself, Marjorie was already well versed in a lifestyle of high stakes and even higher risks. Critics have long pointed out that her first husband, Jim Townsend, wasn't just some guy she met at a grocery store. He was a man deep in the game. And when he went down for a life sentence, Marjorie didn't just disappear into the shadows. According to the investigative whispers now circulating, she allegedly used that time to refine her approach to power and influence. Wendy Williams often hinted that Marjorie has a type, but what she really meant was that Marjorie has a vision for financial security that doesn't allow for any obstacles. When Steve Harvey finally crossed her path, he wasn't just a comedian to her. He was a platform and a ticket to a level of legitimacy that her previous associates could never provide. But the real scandal isn't just who she dated, it is how she allegedly cleared the floor once she got into the Harvey household. When Steve was married to Mary Shackelford, he was a rising star, but he was still grounded in his original family dynamics. The moment Marjorie entered the picture, the energy shifted so drastically that it felt like a tactical military operation. Mary has gone on record multiple times claiming that Marjorie was the architect of the divorce long before the papers were even filed. We are talking about allegations of intercepted letters, secret bank accounts, and a psychological campaign to convince Steve that his past life was holding him back from his future empire. This is where Katt Williams comes in, because Katt has been calling out the fakeness of the industry for decades, and he specifically pointed to Steve as someone who sold his soul for a polished image. Katt suggests that Steve didn't just fall in love. He was recruited into a new way of living where the brand became more important than the bloodline. People are now looking at the treatment of Steve's biological daughters, Brandy and Carly, compared to the treatment of Marjorie's daughter, Lori. While Steve's biological kids were reportedly left to navigate their own paths, Lori was given a silver platter entry into the highest circles of Hollywood. Is it just a coincidence that Marjorie's children were legally adopted and given the Harvey name while the biological kids started appearing less and less in the family's public narrative? The internet is currently losing its mind over resurfaced court documents that suggest Marjorie allegedly pressured Steve to limit the financial support going to his previous family so that they could fund the private jets and the 5-carat diamonds that Marjorie flashes on Instagram every other day. You have to ask yourself why a man who spent 20 years building a reputation as a hard-working father would suddenly become distant from the very people who were there when he was supposedly sleeping in his car. Speaking of that car, let's talk about the homelessness narrative that has been the cornerstone of Steve's motivational speeches for years. Katt Williams didn't just poke a hole in that story, he blew it up with dynamite. Katt claimed that Steve was never struggling the way he says he was, and that the whole rags to riches story was a marketing tool designed by Marjorie to make their union look like a fairy tale of redemption. If Steve was actually making thousands of dollars a week doing shows with Mark Curry like Katt claims, then the story of him being down to his last $5 is one of the biggest lies in entertainment history. But Marjorie needed Steve to be a hero, so she could be the princess who saved him. This manufactured reality is what kept the money flowing, but it also created a massive rift behind the scenes. Anonymous sources close to the family are now claiming that the tension reached a boiling point during a private holiday dinner, where Marjorie allegedly made it clear that her children were the priority for the Harvey estate's future inheritance. This isn't just about feelings, it is about millions of dollars and a legacy that is being rewritten in real time. Wendy Williams used to scream about the silent takeover, and now that she's not on the air to say it, the public is doing the work for her. They are looking at the way Marjorie handles the press, and how she never addresses the rumors directly, because she knows that any direct response would invite a discovery process she can't afford. The level of control she exerts over Steve's public persona is legendary, with reports surfacing that she vets his interviews and even decides which family members are allowed to attend major events. The fear in the industry is that if Marjorie's full history with the DEA investigations into her past husbands ever truly goes mainstream, it could bring down the entire Harvey media machine. But Marjorie is smart, she knows how to play the long game, and she has spent the last decade turning Lori into a distraction. Every time a new scandal about Steve's past marriages pops up, Lori is suddenly spotted with a new A-list celebrity, and the headlines shift from "Steve's ex-wife speaks out" to "Lori Harvey's new mystery man." It is a classic bait and switch that has worked for years until now. With the legal walls closing in and Mary Shackelford reportedly preparing a new set of disclosures that involve financial irregularities during the divorce, the Harveys are facing a storm. They can't just fly over in a private jet. The most disturbing part of this investigative breakdown is the allegation that Steve's son Wynton was used as a pawn in this power struggle. If the reports are true, Steve was coached to take a hardline stance against Mary to ensure she had no leverage in the settlement, which effectively left her with nothing while Marjorie moved into a mansion that Mary helped pay for. This level of alleged cold-blooded calculation is why Katt Williams refuses to let the topic go. He sees the hypocrisy of a man giving relationship advice on television while his own backyard is a graveyard of broken promises and abandoned children. As the public starts to connect these dots, the image of the funny Family Feud host is being replaced by a much darker figure, who is under the total influence of a woman with a very dangerous past. The whispers about Marjorie's influence don't stop at the family home, they extend to Steve's business deals, where she is reportedly the final yes or no on every contract. This isn't a partnership, it is a regime, and the subjects of that regime are finally starting to revolt. People are asking where the money really went and why Steve's biological children are reportedly living modest lives while Marjorie's kids are draped in Hermes and driving Ferraris. The imbalance is so glaring that even the most loyal fans are starting to question the family man title. Every time Marjorie posts a new inspirational quote on her page, the comments are now flooded with questions about Jim Townsend and the missing years of Steve's life. The pressure is mounting and the cracks in the foundation are becoming visible to anyone who is actually paying attention to the details instead of the glitter. We are looking at a situation where the truth is finally catching up to the PR machine, and the fallout is going to be historic, because when you build a house on a foundation of secrets, it only takes one person like Katt Williams to pull the thread that unravels the whole thing. The investigation into the Harveys' wealth and the origins of Marjorie's initial investment into their joint ventures is just beginning, and the findings are pointing toward a web of offshore accounts and hidden assets that Steve's ex-wife has been trying to tell the world about for nearly 20 years, but nobody was listening until now. The shift in public opinion is palpable, and it seems like the era of the Harveys being untouchable is officially coming to a close as the world demands to know what really happened behind the closed doors of their Atlanta mansion before the cameras were turned on and the scripts were written for their perfect life. The fallout from these revelations has moved past the stage of simple internet rumors and entered a territory where even the most expensive crisis management teams are struggling to keep the narrative under control. As we move into this next phase of the investigation, the focus shifts from Marjorie's past to the actual mechanical destruction of the Harvey family structure as it once existed. According to insiders and recently resurfaced legal claims, the transition from Mary to Marjorie wasn't just a change of wives. It was a total erasure of Steve's previous history. Imagine working by a man's side for nearly 2 decades, being there when he was performing in smoky clubs for peanuts, and then being told you never existed once the bright lights of Hollywood turned on. That is the reality Mary Shackelford has been living, and the details of how she was allegedly sidelined are nothing short of a psychological thriller. Public records suggest that while Steve was becoming the face of family values on television, his private life was a battlefield where Marjorie was reportedly calling the shots on who stayed and who went. Katt Williams alluded to this when he mentioned that Steve married someone who thinks like a man, a coded way of saying that Marjorie's approach to the Harvey brand was cold, calculated, and devoid of the sentimental loyalty that fans expected. The most shocking part of this Part 2 breakdown involves the alleged financial manipulation used to keep the biological children in check. New reports from anonymous sources close to the family's inner circle claim that Marjorie implemented a loyalty-based allowance system. Essentially, if Steve's biological children didn't publicly praise Marjorie or participate in the perfect blended family photo shoots, their access to the Harvey fortune was reportedly restricted. Meanwhile, Marjorie's children were being set up with luxury businesses and high-end modeling contracts. Wendy Williams was one of the first to point out that Lori Harvey's career didn't just happen. It was a curated project funded by Steve's hard-earned money under Marjorie's strict direction. Critics are now asking, where was that same energy for Steve's biological daughters? Why was one daughter being pushed onto the covers of magazines, while the others were reportedly struggling to get a return phone call from their father's assistant? The disparity is so massive that it has created a permanent rift that no amount of Instagram family dinners can fix. As the pressure mounts, the conversation has turned toward the legal validity of the Harveys' wealth distribution. Mary Shackelford has long claimed that Steve hid assets during their divorce to ensure she wouldn't get a fair share of the empire they built together. But the new twist in the story is the allegation that those hidden assets were allegedly funneled into accounts that Marjorie had access to before they were even married. If this is true, it would mean that Marjorie wasn't just a third party in the marriage. She was an active participant in the financial dismantling of Mary's life. The internet detectives have been cross-referencing dates, and they've noticed a strange pattern of Steve purchasing luxury properties and making massive investments right around the time his relationship with Marjorie was heating up, all while he was telling the divorce courts that he was financially strapped. This is the hidden truth that Katt Williams was hinting at when he said the timeline doesn't add up. The narrative of the struggling comedian doesn't fit with a man who was allegedly moving millions of dollars into offshore entities to protect them from a legitimate settlement. But let's talk about the psychological toll this has taken on Steve's biological son, Winton. For years, the story was that Mary was the unstable one. But the resurfaced police reports paint a picture of a household under extreme tension. When Winton allegedly spoke to authorities about the discipline he received, it wasn't just a minor family disagreement. The reports mention visible marks and a child who was terrified of his father's temper. What's even more disturbing is the theory that Marjorie allegedly encouraged this tough love approach to alienate Winton from his mother. By positioning herself as the stable maternal figure, Marjorie allegedly managed to flip the script, making Mary look like the villain in her own son's eyes. This is a level of manipulation that goes beyond celebrity gossip. It's a masterclass in family subversion. Fans are now re-watching old clips of Steve talking about manhood and discipline, and they are seeing a man who was allegedly being coached to prioritize his new life at the expense of his children's mental well-being. The controversy doesn't stop with the children. It extends to the very jokes Steve tells on stage. Katt Williams' accusation that Steve stole material from Bernie Mac and Mark Curry has taken on a new life because it ties back to the idea of the identity heist. If Steve's career is built on stolen humor and his family life is built on a stolen legacy, what is left of the man himself? Critics argue that Steve has become a puppet for Marjorie's ambition. She allegedly realized early on that Steve was a golden goose that could be plucked for decades if his image remained clean. This is why she reportedly works so hard to suppress any negative press. There are rumors of non-disclosure agreements being handed out like candy to anyone who works in the Harvey household. From the chefs to the security guards, everyone is reportedly under a gag order to ensure that the reality of the Harveys' living situation never hits the blogs. But as Wendy Williams used to say, the tea always spills, and right now it's a flood. We also have to look at the Marjorie effect on Steve's professional relationships. Longtime associates of Steve have reportedly been pushed out of his inner circle because they knew too much about the transition from Mary to Marjorie. It's a classic move in a power takeover. Isolate the target from anyone who remembers the truth. This is why you see Steve surrounded by a revolving door of new assistants and managers who only know the version of Steve that Marjorie created. The hidden truth is that Steve Harvey, the man who tells you how to act like a success, is reportedly living a life where he can't even choose his own friends without approval. The humor in his old specials has been replaced by a stiff, corporate persona that feels more like a brand representative than a human being. Katt Williams noticed this shift and called it out as a loss of soul, suggesting that Steve is more concerned with his suit collection than his comedic integrity. The public reaction to these Part 2 revelations has been one of pure shock. On social media, the hashtag The Harvey Heist is trending as people share clips of Mary Shackelford's old interviews, where she predicted exactly what is happening today. People are finally seeing that Mary wasn't bitter. She was a woman who was gaslit by an entire industry. The level of power Steve and Marjorie wielded in the mid-2000s allowed them to silence Mary's claims by labeling her as the angry ex-wife, a trope that Hollywood loves to use to protect its male stars. But in 2026, that narrative is no longer working. The audience is smarter, the receipts are digital, and the voices of people like Katt Williams carry more weight than a polished PR statement. The internet is demanding answers about the missing money, the treatment of the biological kids, and the real reason Marjorie was so desperate to marry Steve just as his career hit the stratosphere. What makes this even more explosive is the reported tension between Marjorie and Steve's biological daughters, Brandy and Carly. There are whispers that a major confrontation took place behind the scenes regarding the distribution of the family's estate. Marjorie allegedly wants to ensure that her children are the primary beneficiaries of the Harvey brand's future royalties, a move that would essentially disinherit Steve's bloodline. If this is true, it explains why the family looks so happy in photos, but has zero interaction in real life outside of paid appearances. The hidden truth is a story of greed, erasure, and a woman who reportedly views a family as a business portfolio rather than a sacred bond. As we prepare to look at the final fallout in the next section, one thing is clear. The Harvey empire is built on sand, and the tide of truth is coming in fast. The world is watching to see if Steve will finally wake up, or if he will go down with the ship that Marjorie is steering straight into a legal and social iceberg. The silence from the Harvey camp is deafening, but the voices of the people they tried to silence are becoming a roar that can no longer be ignored by the mainstream media, or the fans who feel betrayed by the man they once trusted for advice. The legal and social walls are finally closing in on the Harvey empire, and what we are witnessing in this final chapter is the total collapse of a carefully constructed illusion. As the investigation reaches its peak, the focus has shifted toward the potential for actual legal consequences that could strip the Harveys of their untouchable status. Reports are circulating that Mary Shackelford is not just talking to bloggers anymore. She is reportedly consulting with high-level forensic accountants to track the movement of funds that occurred during the height of Steve's career. If these investigators find that millions were funneled into Marjorie's personal accounts or offshore entities to circumvent divorce settlements, we are looking at more than just a scandal. We are looking at potential fraud charges that could rock the entire entertainment industry. The hidden truth isn't just a family secret. It's a financial web that Katt Williams warned us was built on a foundation of lies and borrowed brilliance. The public backlash has reached a fever pitch as fans realize that the man who wrote the book on Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man might have been taking his own advice a little too literally when it came to cold-blooded strategy. People are now questioning the validity of every motivational speech Steve has ever given. How can a man talk about the sanctity of family and the importance of a father's role when his own biological children are reportedly treated like second-class citizens in their own father's house? The contrast between the billionaire lifestyle Marjorie displays and the reported struggles of Steve's first family has become a symbol of everything people hate about Hollywood elitism. It's the idea that you can buy a new life, buy a new family, and simply delete the people who helped you build the foundation in the first place. Wendy Williams predicted this years ago when she said that Marjorie was playing a long game, and now that game is entering the end game. Adding fuel to the fire are the rumors of a massive federal probe into the business dealings associated with Marjorie's past. For years, the narrative was that she was just a socialite who happened to have a colorful dating history. But investigative journalists are now digging into the connections between her former associates and the initial capital used to launch her lifestyle brands. There is a growing theory that Steve's name was used to launder a reputation that was otherwise too toxic for mainstream success. If the authorities decide to look into the gifts and donations made to the Harvey Foundation, they might find that the line between Steve's comedy money and Marjorie's past connections is much blurrier than anyone wanted to admit. This is the nightmare scenario for Steve, a man who has worked so hard to become a brand ambassador for major corporations. If his wife's past catches up to his present, every endorsement deal, every TV show, and every business partnership could vanish overnight. But the real fallout is happening on social media, where the court of public opinion has already reached a verdict. The comment sections of Steve and Marjorie's posts have turned into a digital battlefield. People are no longer distracted by the private jets or the designer outfits. They are asking about the kids. They are asking why Steve's son Winton has spent years in the shadows while Marjorie's son is being positioned as a business mogul. They are asking why Steve's biological daughters are rarely seen at the major Harvey events. The level of scrutiny is unprecedented, and the silent operator tactics Marjorie has used for a decade are no longer working. She can't delete the comments fast enough, and she can't hide from the fact that Katt Williams has given a voice to everyone who felt that something was off about this family dynamic from day one. The tension within the household is reportedly at an all-time high, with sources claiming that Steve is finally starting to see the cracks in the armor. Imagine realizing that the woman you thought saved you was actually the one who isolated you from everyone who truly loved you for who you were, not for your paycheck. There are whispers that Steve has been seen in meetings with his own separate legal counsel, a move that suggests he might be preparing for a plan B if the Marjorie scandal becomes too heavy to carry. But can he even leave at this point? With Marjorie reportedly holding the keys to the kingdom and having her name on almost every major asset, a split would mean the total financial ruin of Steve Harvey. He is essentially a prisoner of the empire he helped build. A comedic king trapped in a palace designed by a woman who knows exactly where all the bodies are buried. This brings us to the ultimate question that Wendy Williams and Katt Williams have both hinted at. Was Steve Harvey ever really in control? Or was he just the face of a much larger operation? The hidden truth seems to be that Steve was a willing participant in his own rebranding. But he didn't realize that the price of that rebranding was the soul of his family. The stories of his homelessness, his miracle rise to fame, and his perfect marriage are all being reevaluated as clever marketing ploys designed to extract money from an audience that wanted to believe in a hero. But as Katt Williams said, the truth is a bitter pill, and the fans are currently choking on it. The legacy of Steve Harvey is no longer about Family Feud or funny suits. It is becoming a cautionary tale about what happens when you let a strategic partner take the wheel of your personal life. The consequences of this scandal are already starting to manifest in Steve's career. Reports suggest that network executives are concerned about the optics of the situation, especially with the resurfaced allegations regarding Winton's childhood. In the age of accountability, a family man brand can't survive a family abuse allegation, even if it is years old. The shadow of Mary Shackelford's pain is finally looming larger than the Harvey's PR machine can handle. We are looking at a potential collapse of the Harvey media brand, a downfall that would be one of the most significant in the history of Black Hollywood. And at the center of it all stands Marjorie, the woman who Katt Williams claims thinks like a man, and who Wendy Williams claimed was the real boss. Whether she is a genius strategist or a family saboteur, she has managed to become one of the most controversial figures in modern pop culture. As we wrap up this investigation, the evidence points toward a looming crisis that no amount of fashion shows can fix. The Harvey family is at a crossroads, and the road ahead is paved with depositions, forensic audits, and a public that is no longer buying the advice from a man whose own life is a masterclass in unresolved conflict. The truth is finally out, and it is messier, darker, and more expensive than anyone ever dreamed. The Harveys are no longer the ones giving the advice. They are the ones serving as a warning to everyone else in the industry. Katt Williams and Wendy Williams might have been called messy and bitter, but as the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, they look more like the only people who were brave enough to tell the truth before the cameras were turned off. So what happens next? Will Steve finally speak out and address the biological children he reportedly left behind? Will Marjorie be forced to answer for the financial maneuvers that left Mary Shackelford in the cold? Or will they try to launch yet another distraction, another luxury vacation, another inspirational post to bury the noise? One thing is for certain, the internet does not forget, and the receipts are now part of the permanent record. The family man image is dead, and what is left is a business transaction that is finally being audited by the world. It's time for Steve and Marjorie to realize that you can't buy a legacy, And you certainly can't build a real family on a foundation of secrets and stolen history. The world is waiting for the final act of this drama, and it looks like the curtains are finally coming down on the Harvey heist. What do you think about the shocking revelations from Katt and Wendy? Do you believe Steve was a victim of Marjorie's ambition? Or was he the architect of his own family's destruction? The comments are open, and the world is listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because this investigation is far from over, and the next update might be the one that changes everything forever. This is the moment of truth that has been years in the making, and the question isn't just whether the Harvey empire can survive the storm, but whether the fans will ever look at Steve the same way again. We've laid out the receipts, the missing timelines, and the voices of the people who were there before the fame, from Mary Shackelford's heartbreaking claims to the blunt exposures from Katt Williams and Wendy Williams. Now the ball is in your court. Do you think Marjorie Harvey is the strategic mastermind behind this family's public image? Or is she just a woman being unfairly targeted for her past? Did Steve really abandon his biological roots for a polished Hollywood brand? Or is there a side to this story we still haven't seen? The internet never forgets, and the truth has a funny way of surfacing just when things look the most perfect. I want to hear your unfiltered thoughts in the comments below. Don't hold back. Was Steve ever actually homeless, or was that the first of many carefully crafted lies? Drop a comment, hit that like button if you're tired of the industry fakes, and make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on. We are digging deeper into the Harvey files as we speak, and you definitely don't want to miss the next update. The mask is off, the secrets are out, and the conversation is just getting started. Stay tuned.